All right, we're going to continue on and we're going to talk to Sean from Eaton. Sean, when we hear about, as you know, we're talking about intelligence and intelligence in the data center. And I think a lot of people are certain, if I say data center intelligence, they're thinking about, servers and networks and GPUs. And well, you and I know both none of that works without power. So, what is Eaton doing to bring intelligence to power delivery in the data center?
So when you start to talk about a purpose-built data center, some of the interesting things that we're doing is some new products on the physical side, right? One we would talk about the energy-aware UPS that has the ability to read and interact with the grid, right? So based on that notice, be able to go to battery backup and engage with demand response times. Right. And then so when you start looking at some of the larger data centers, even working on those software algorithms to do the ROI calculation of when does it make sense to get off the grid during a demand response request from the utility provider, and in some cases even turn data centers into a profit center rather than a cost center based on what they can save.
I know we've got a lot of traditional data center, as well as what I know Eaton refers to as distributed IT, which a lot of us talk about as edge, where I've got more and more locations where I need IT, which means I need controlled power. I need, managed power, whether that's, just conditioning or better yet, UPS, et cetera, et cetera. So what does Eden offer in kind of that more traditional, maybe smaller scale data center or those distributed
Yeah,
environments?
so we offer vendor neutral software for monitoring the and managing that distributed IT environment, which helps the customers one get an early warning signal if you're going to have a problem. Because if you don't have IT people at those facilities, it gives you the time to plan and do any kind of maintenance that you need before you're losing power and have a disruption in service that ultimately costs revenue. That's the most common use case that we see. Also, with those solutions, it helps with cybersecurity. The ability to push out firmware, right? As much as cybersecurity is an issue, right? Most of them occur because people haven't applied updates, right? You start working across a large organization that doesn't have that has thousands of locations. That's a costly event to push out firmware to all those locations. Where with Eaton, you can automatically mass configure those UPSs, and then number two, push out firmware as soon as it comes, making sure that your environment is secure.
That's not something a lot of people think about. They think about, if you're saying, pushing updates, they're thinking, oh, servers or storage or whatever. But I mean, that's one of the big challenges with industrial IoT is a lot of the actual devices have threats, and people don't necessarily think about infrastructure and how important it is to keep that up and running. Because being able to threaten to shut you down remotely by turning off your UPS is as much as a risk of ransomware or other things, especially if you need that high availability because your healthcare or something like that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Is unfortunately a lot of customers don't think about those things until they have a catastrophe, and I think it's a great opportunity for people to proactively engage with their customers on how they can apply some of those intelligent solutions to keep their environment one both operationally secure and prevent those problems through analytics and predictive analytics before they occur.
So I guess one of the questions that a lot of people have is it's like, well, I don't need this. I can just go to the interface on that UPS and those kind of things. But, operationally, we know, the two big things are scale and, number of locations. So, is there some guidelines? I mean, obviously it makes sense to reach out to somebody either on the team here at Ingram and get in touch with Eaton directly, possibly. But there are some guidelines that we can go with and say, hey, when we start getting into, whether it's a number of sites or the amount of equipment, that we can really look at and say, hey, I really need to be considering a monitoring solution if I want to do this effectively.
Yeah, I mean, what we see is somewhere in the area, if you have 10 facilities, that need to be managed where you don't have staff. That's where people immediately have the payoff with solutions for monitoring and managing those locations remotely. If you have anywhere near the area of 30 or above and aren't doing it, I think you're asking for trouble, right? If you have 30 or more, you've got to be doing something like this. If it doesn't bite you today, it's going to bite you tomorrow.
So I know that Eaton has quite a few different monitoring solutions out there. And are they tailored for different use cases? Are they kind of interchangeable? How do I make that kind of decision?
Yeah, I mean, it's modular, and of course, the folks at Ingram are here to help you with those solutions as well, or those decisions, as well as the folks at Eaton. But it's pretty simple, right? If you just want to do a basic configuration, what's my status, and provide a little automation to extend the runtime of batteries and have graceful shutdown, that's our Intelligent Power Manager solution, right? If you're getting into managing a fleet of UPSs and rack PDUs, 10 or more, that's where we really instruct people. Probably the best solution is Visual Power Manager. And then if you are a large Eaton customer and then want to have predictive analytics on your devices, as well as being able to proactively dispatch service technicians based on what we see, that's our Predict Pulse managed solution offering.
All right, so that lays it out pretty well, and that's one of the things that we're always looking at too. Is how do I make these decisions, and I guess kind of the follow up to that is who's actually using them. We always like to bring out real use cases where things really make a difference. So, is there anything that you've been involved with recently that was really impactful, where either it was just you really solved a problem, or you really had an impact that benefited that customer?
Several, right? One of the ones that we talk about is there's a large retailer that is standardized on Eaton gear, and it's amazing what happens at some of these locations that you hear, right? And you have non-IT people, right? And what they were using was using the network closet for storage. So they would take clothes and merchandise that is set on the store and using it and filling up that server room, right? So it started to overheat. Um, because of our solutions, they were able to get that remote monitoring solution, be able to get that warning, and even just through a phone call, say, "Hey, you know anything going on in that?" It's like, "Oh yeah, that's where I put all the seasonal merchandise when we moved it out, and I was using it as storage." Right. So sometimes the solution doesn't even have to be a technical one, but just through knowing and asking questions, and that's one of the reasons why I think that's a really interesting story, right? You have non-IT people not knowing what that equipment is there and used for, um, and you gives you the eyes where you don't have them.
Well, it reminds me of some of those horror stories that you read, that once you get into the industry, you find out that actually happened. But we may have talked about this. I'm a big fan of colored power cords, because I like to be able to tell people, unplug the blue cable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you get those all over the place, and it's like one of my personal favorites is when they realized somebody was remotely monitoring a UPS, and then they weren't connecting it anymore, and it was because it was beeping and annoying the clerk that was working in the retail store. So the clerk just unplugged it, right? These are the things that happen when you don't have IT on staff and you get outside of that traditional purpose-built data center.
All right. Well, I've got a couple of new stories to throw in the war chest there when I have these kind of conversations with people. So thank you very much, Sean. Some great insight, and hopefully some of our partners will reach out to you.
All right, I hope so, and it was a pleasure talking with you today. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks, Sean.
All right. Thanks, Sean.